Okay, we're continuing with quotes. This is Ben McEvoy. Now, Ben McEvoy has a very good YouTube channel. It's called Hardcore Literature. He has I think it's a bachelor's degree from Oxford in English literature, and he wants to be a writer. I don't know how old he is for sure. I would ballpark him probably in his mid-30s. You know, he's a smart guy. He's read a lot. He's pleasant, and he talks about the books he's read. Okay, so I also think, he's too young. A guy who's, you don't really know women until you've been married for years, you've raised children, you've seen your parents get old or even die, and you've seen a lot of stuff, all your friends telling you the stories about getting divorced and stuff. Then you kind of understand them, and it takes a while to get there, and you've raised children, sons and daughters. You've seen your friends go through all this stuff. So what I'm trying to say is, most things in life, you're not as good as you get older. You're not as smart at 50 at doing mathematics as you were at 20. You're not as physically strong at 50 as you were at 20. But the older you get, the smarter you become about life, about wisdom. As long as you've kept your arteries open, you got a lot of experience. So that's what I think his weakness is. He's got a very good brain and he's a hard worker. But, for example, he said Tolstoy is the best Russian novelist. He said he's like God in his books, showing us another world. Whereas I think Tolstoy is just a jerk, okay? Read The Intellectuals by Johnson, the historian. Tolstoy is such a jerk. And a perfect example, and Ayn Rand said the same thing. I agree with her. Tolstoy is just miserable. Tolstoy is hopeless. For Anna Karenina, the only option he felt was left open to her was suicide. No, BS. That's Tolstoy right there. He just has this terrible outlook, and he was a terrible person to his family. You read about him, the more you learn about Tolstoy, the less you will like him, okay? The great hero of Russian literature is like Pushkin, with the poetry and all that, but then Fyodor Dostoevsky is a novelist. He's magnificent, okay? Brothers Karamazov, I'd put that as the third best book of all time. First is Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. Second is Les Mis, Victor Hugo. And the third best book of all time in terms of novels is Brothers Karamazov. And then Ben McEvoy later on, he's going to talk about characters, how readers like it when there's a character who they can identify with. They almost see themselves in the book. And for me, the best character in all of fictional literature is Alyosha. Because basically, how do you navigate this complex Russian countryside, city areas? And the best way to be is like Alyosha, the nice Christian guy. And I had a lot more in common in some ways with Ivan, the sort of intellectual. But dry intellectualism without the warm Christian side, it doesn't work. Okay, and that's what happened to Ivan. You have to have the warm side, otherwise you're not going to be able to handle a lot of things in life. Anyways, what else does Ben McEvoy says? He says you can get a free education with a library card, and that's equivalent to a bachelor's degree in English literature just by reading on your own. Yeah, it's sort of like, why pay all that money to just read books on your own? And you can get a start faster. I mean, there's some things that school helps you for learning, but a lot of stuff it's better to learn on your own. Okay, he says it's good to make your essay public when you write an essay, because then you get feedback on it. Okay, that's the nice thing about social media. You can have people look at you can post a literature paper on YouTube. You can post it on LinkedIn and other places. And he says you can become an Amazon affiliate and get a small fee for your reviews, apparently. He says to increase retention now, he makes a video review every time he reads a book. And he has like Readers Club. People read books along with him. And then he talks to them about it. And, he knows a lot. I mean, he's got an entire degree in reading English literature. He likes to watch other people's video summaries of a book. It helps him to retain the info. I agree. I like to watch the movie. Sometimes I would read. People say, don't watch the movie first. It'll spoil the book. But I would like to watch the movie because then I can sort of see the whole big picture of the book. When I listen to a book, I'm partly listening for the story, but I'm also listening that's the perspective of a typical reader, but I'm also listening from the perspective of a writer. How does the author set the whole thing up? How does he, show the characters? What's the bigger point that he's getting to? How does this relate to his life? All that I find rather interesting. Okay. Then he says, the novel theme was largely developed by the English in the 1700s and early 1800s, books like Tristram Shandy. You would also have to say, look at Spain, Don Quixote in the 1600s, okay, please. Okay. Let's see. Russians came to the novel later, e.g. after 1850 with Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Uh, Pushkin, Eugene Onegin. Okay, let's see. What else does he say? He says, oh, Russia was mysticism in the 1800s. No, it was Christianity, you jerk. I don't like that type of language. In 1800s, he said American literature was almost an oxymoron, but in 1900s, American literature was the best in the world. I don't agree with that because I just think all literature in the 1900s was not that great. You know, Hemingway is kind of an interesting storyteller, but he wasn't as public as he should have been about his Christianity. He was a Christian, but he was an alcoholic, self-destructive alcoholic. You know, F. Scott Fitzgerald is another self-destructive alcoholic, okay? James Joyce, another self-destructive alcoholic. So I'm sorry, but and then look at those other female writers. They're insane, okay? The female writers of the early 1900s. Virginia Woolf, you know, constantly trying to kill herself and commit suicide. And then the other female they talk about, Sylvia Plath. You know, she's an idiot. She's just trying to commit suicide. What I'm trying to say is I want a reader who I can respect, who I can look up to, who I can learn from, who's gone through life, experienced it, and has some good insight they can share with me that's valuable. I don't want to listen to some suicidal maniac who wants to kill himself. If that's all the conclusion they've come to from life, they really don't have anything to teach me, okay? People undergo difficult things and they learn how to overcome them. That's useful, okay? So what I'm trying to say is the public school promotes all these scumbag idiots. You know, and Faulkner is so verbose. He's a pain in the butt, and he's a bit of a wimp. I'm sorry, but I don't think those writers have much to offer. You know, my favorite writer from the 1900s is people like, you know, Michener. I liked a story about Poland, for example, okay? I like Tom Wolfe. He's a very sophisticated writer, you know, amongst the male writers. Okay, the female writers, I would say, you know, Ayn Rand was magnificent, especially though when she wrote nonfiction, like the Romantic Manifesto about literature was magnificent. I thought, you know, Ann Coulter was the best writer about nonfiction. Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, was also very good, but Romantic Manifesto was much better. Okay, let's see what else does Ben McEvoy has to say. He says, yeah, we identify with the character. Okay, I talked about that already. And he says, the characters I associate myself. That was my Alyosha statement. Anyways, that's it for Ben McEvoy. You can just check his YouTube channel out if you want. He is good. I mean, if you're interested in literature, he's good. You'll like